The charming leading men, the million-dollar smiles and careers that seemed untouchable. In the 1940s and 1950s, the matinee idols were kings, pampered and protected by powerful studios as their most valuable assets. But behind the dazzling stage lights and the lavish parties in Beverly Hills, a dark, unwritten rule existed, a truth the industry spent decades trying to bury. The charming leading men, the million-dollar smiles and careers that seemed untouchable. In the 1940s and 1950s, the matinee idols were kings pampered and protected by powerful studios as their most valuable assets. But behind the dazzling stage lights and the lavish parties in Beverly Hills, a dark, unwritten rule existed, a truth the industry spent decades trying to bury. This is the story Hollywood hopes you would never discover. But today, we're pulling back the curtain on that truth. If you believe Hollywood has hidden secrets, comment 1. If you're not convinced, leave a 0, enjoy the video, and don't forget to like, share, and leave a sub to support the channel. Sal Mineo, the young actor who played James Dean's best friend in Rebel Without a Cause, rose to fame like a phenomenon, but quickly fell into Hollywood's whirlwind of instability. Behind that fame was a past he rarely spoke about publicly. Early in his career, Mineo was invited to meet a well-known producer for a private discussion about his acting direction, a conversation he later described as the first turning point, one that opened doors, but also came with heavy pressure. In a conversation with friends, he said that influential people in the industry often set unpredictable expectations, and young actors had to prove their flexibility and patience if they wanted to be given a chance. The morning after that meeting, Mineo's name appeared on the official audition list for Rebel Without a Cause. Though he never went into details, Mineo never denied that those early experiences made him grow up faster and become more cautious. In a 1973 interview, the latter part of which was never aired, he said, "In Hollywood, if you don't do your job well, they'll forget you quickly." After James Dean passed away, Mineo's career became increasingly unstable. He frequently ran into professional setbacks, got pulled into unclear working relationships, and sometimes had to accept small roles just to make ends meet. A close attorney revealed that Mineo had been involved in several complicated professional arrangements with a few directors in Palm Springs relationships that provided him with work, but also added more pressure. By the late 1960s, Mineo tried to rebuild his career by directing theater, joining independent projects, and speaking out about the invisible pressures many young actors were forced to endure. About a week before the major incident in his life, Mineo told a CBS reporter that he was holding documents related to irregularities in the casting system and planned to reveal them publicly. On February 12, 1976, Mineo was found dead near his apartment in West Hollywood. The official report labeled it an undetermined accident, but many details surrounding the case, from his personal files to the materials he had been collecting, left the public with unanswered questions. Sal Mineo's story is a quiet yet powerful reminder that in an industry glittering with bright lights, the most dangerous thing isn't failure. It's the truth people are too afraid to speak. The greatest lesson from Mineo is clarity. Protect your own value and don't let pressure make you lose yourself in the whirlwind of fame. Tab Hunter, the teen idol who once captivated America with his radiant smile, but behind Hollywood's bright lights was a hidden life he carried for decades. In the 1950s, when Hunter was just 19 and taking his first steps into the industry, an incident at a private party in Long Beach nearly brought everything crashing down. A powerful producer intervened not with money, but with a multi-year exclusive contract that placed Hunter on the exact path Hollywood wanted him to follow. Looking back on that time, Hunter simply said, "I didn't lose anything, but I had to follow choices I couldn't refuse." At the height of his fame, Hunter was constantly paired in the press with young actresses like Natalie Wood and Debbie Reynolds. These weren't just professional relationships, they were publicity scripts crafted by the studio to protect the image of the perfect heartthrob that Hollywood demanded in those days. In his memoir, he admitted, "I wasn't chosen for my acting. I was chosen because I fit the image they needed me to maintain." Even after becoming famous, Hunter remained under strict control. Every public appearance was carefully orchestrated, every interview came with restricted questions, and the people around him were arranged to ensure everything followed the studio's script. His life gradually became a continuous performance, where his charm and good looks were turned into a mask, one designed to hide the parts of himself he was never allowed to reveal. And as with every trade-off, the price he paid was constant fear. Hunter always worried that a single mistake could destroy his career, afraid that anything slipping out of his control would expose the part of his life he was forced to hide. That fear kept him silent for years, even as the world fell in love with the version of him Hollywood created. Behind the glamour were sacrifices the audience would never see. The most important truth is to live authentically, because fame can be manufactured, but peace cannot. Marlon Brando, the man who turned boldness and ambition into a survival strategy in a Hollywood driven by power. In a 1975 interview, he openly said that his path to fame was never built on talent alone, but also on how he faced the expectations and the decision-makers who controlled the industry. That statement, later quoted by Vanity Fair in 2001, revealed another truth about Hollywood's golden era. Fame was not just an achievement, but an ongoing negotiation with the complex power system surrounding it. In the late 1940s, when Brando was still struggling on the New York stage, director George Cukor was said to have helped him, quietly offering financial support, providing living arrangements, and most importantly, opening doors for Brando to meet influential figures in the industry. It was Cukor who called director Elia Kazan, urging him to take notice of Brando and invite him to audition for A Streetcar Named Desire, the role that changed the entire course of film history and propelled Brando straight into legend. From that point on, Brando understood exactly how Hollywood operated. You had to find allies, know how to navigate those with influence in the studios, and maintain relationships with the most powerful figures. After his passing, many pages from his personal notes were released, revealing a long list of people who had supported him throughout his career. From directors to producers, including Jack Warner, who was said to have helped Brando avoid a media scandal in 1953 so he could continue filming Julius Caesar. All of it reflected one truth: Brando entered Hollywood not only with talent, but with a deep understanding of how the industry truly operated. He once said that he used boldness and a fearless attitude as tools the way others used ambition. Because in Hollywood, survival meant being stronger than the pressures surrounding you. More than half a century has passed, and Marlon Brando's legacy remains full of contradictions: a great artist, but also a man shaped by a demanding system. Talent may lift you off the ground, but to stand firm in a high-pressure world, one must stay clear-minded, know their own limits, and learn to protect their personal values against outside forces. Rock Hudson, the Hollywood gentleman with irresistible charm, yet also the man who carried expectations and pressures behind closed doors. He wasn't just a movie star, He was the embodiment of perfection that the studios of that era sought to manufacture. In the early 1950s, when he was still a young actor at Universal, Hudson was managed by Henry Wilson, a powerful agent who saw in him a handsome face, refined demeanor, and the potential to become Hollywood's ideal masculine icon. However, to maintain that image, Hudson also had to participate in countless private events and closed-door gatherings where he was expected to be pleasant, tactful, and accommodating to the expectations of influential figures in the industry. Hudson possessed a flawless physique, a warm voice, and a presence that captivated the public. But it was his calm and discreet nature that made the studios trust him completely. A memo released in 1989 mentioned that Hudson always maintained a professional attitude, willingly attending gatherings for investors or key studio figures. He was considered the ideal representative, someone who knew how to converse charmingly, keep the atmosphere pleasant, and never cross professional boundaries. From the Beverly Hills Hotel to the luxurious estates in Palm Springs, Hudson often appeared with a courteous smile, shaking hands with donors, chatting with guests, and always maintaining a flawless public image. In Full Service, Scotty Bowers mentioned a conversation between Wilson and producer Ross Hunter showing that Hudson was considered a valuable asset in fundraising. His presence alone could make an event remarkably successful. Even after Hudson became a superstar with Pillow Talk and Magnificent Obsession, he remained closely tied to discreet fundraising events for major donors. The studio knew that Hudson's presence alone could secure millions of dollars in investment for upcoming projects. Those close to him said his schedule was so packed that few people truly knew whom he met at which events or how many responsibilities he handled beyond the spotlight. After his passing, a small note was found among his archived documents, containing only one haunting line: "Remember that an image can also be a cage." Rock Hudson is proof that behind Hollywood's glamorous surface lies a trade-off of time image and even personal space. Success requires effort, but preserving your own values within a high-pressure system is the true challenge. And if you feel these hidden truths are worth reflecting on, please comment 1. If you're not entirely convinced, leave a 0 so we can hear your perspective. Don't forget to like, share, and leave a sub to support us. And now, let's continue following the next unfolding chapters together. Montgomery Clift, the sorrowful eyes of a man shaped by Hollywood's silent pressures. He rarely smiled in front of the camera. His gaze always carried an unnamed burden, as if his soul belonged to another world. That emotional intensity set Clift apart in the early years of his career, yet behind it were experiences he seldom spoke about. According to entries in Elizabeth Taylor's diary, Clift once confided that in his early days on stage, he had to accept many difficult demands just to be given a chance, often at the cost of emotional strain far beyond what a young performer could imagine. When Taylor asked if he ever regretted it, Clift simply replied, "No. But every time I think about it, I feel like a part of me was taken away." In 1945, before fame ever found him, Clift attended a private audition at the Baird Estate where director Joshua Logan was searching for actors for his new project. After the session, Clift stayed there for several days to discuss the role and his career direction. An elderly housekeeper later told Clift that during that time he had broken down under pressure more than once. But when he left the estate, he walked away holding a contract that would mark a new chapter in his career. Even after he had become a major star, Clift never spoke about those challenging early days. When asked by Variety, he simply replied, "I started in small theaters and empty rooms. That's where I had to learn how to survive before anyone ever noticed me." Clift spent most of his life in solitude, battling inner anxieties and the expectations Hollywood placed on his shoulders. The things he kept bottled up became the emotional fuel behind performances so profound that few could match them. His eyes carried the memory of hard choices and quiet heartbreaks, allowing audiences to feel a genuine depth beneath the cool, enigmatic charm he projected on screen. Sometimes success isn't about the spotlight, it's about the journey of overcoming silent emotional wounds. No one truly knows what you've endured to stand on that stage, but the most important thing is to hold on to your humanity amid all the pressure. James Dean, the rebel, who carried unspoken truths within him. In the summer of 1951 in Los Angeles, the 20-year-old from Indiana stepped off a Greyhound bus with a thin bag and eyes full of unease. He had no money, no connections, and no clear plan. Only a quiet magnetism that made people stop and look. And it was that very silence that opened doors a nameless newcomer should never have been able to reach in glamorous Hollywood. Places like the Chateau Marmont back then didn't just welcome young talent, they were also environments filled with challenges and hidden complexities. Dean, still unknown at the time, often appeared at private gatherings where young actors were expected to be polite, adaptable, and willing to meet the expectations of those who held power in the industry. Rogers Brackett, the theater director who later became Dean's mentor, helped him find opportunities and brought him closer to the worlds of stage and television, but that guidance also came with invisible pressures. Some neighbors recalled seeing Dean go through emotionally heavy nights while living in Brackett's apartment, only to appear the next morning calm and composed, ready to step onto the stage as if nothing had happened. During that period, the media and colleagues often mentioned that Dean had to accept many sacrifices to secure his very first television role on CBS, a reflection of the harsh realities of the entertainment world rather than any sensational story. Dean didn't have the privilege to say no, because behind him was the fear of returning to the difficult life of washing dishes on Sunset Boulevard, the very place he had escaped from to chase his dream of becoming an actor. As fame slowly arrived, Dean's life became more tightly controlled. He was expected to attend glamorous parties, meet influential figures, and maintain the image the studio wanted for him. A few old friends said Dean often felt overly watched at times, suffocated by how Hollywood managed the life of a rising star. The more successful he became, the more isolated he felt, pulled into the relentless machinery of fame with no clear way out. James Dean's short life came to an end in 1955 when his Porsche 550 Spyder crashed on a California highway. He was only 24. Nearly 70 years have passed, yet his image remains vividly alive, a symbol of rebellion, freedom, and youth, daring to defy the mold. But behind that brilliance lies a deeper lesson: talent can lift a person quickly, but it's steadfastness, self-worth, and the ability to protect oneself that allows someone to endure in a world as pressurized as Hollywood. Cary Grant, the perfect gentleman under Hollywood's bright lights, yet a man who was almost never allowed to say no. The press praised him as the ideal husband, a refined gentleman every woman dreamed of. But Grant's real-life story stood in contrast to that glamorous image. For nearly 2 decades at the start of his career, he was closely connected with actor Randolph Scott, a trusted companion with whom he shared many years of living and working side by side. At the Malibu mansion, Grant and Scott often hosted private gatherings for directors, screenwriters, and major Hollywood investors. According to Scotty Bowers, who was well known at the time for his role as a connector within the film industry, these gatherings weren't just simple parties. They were places where behind-the-scenes relationships were formed, relationships that could determine the career paths of many young actors. A cameraman once recalled Grant inviting several directors to the house, then speaking with them privately, in a closed meeting room, strategic conversations that just a few days later turned into real opportunities. Indeed, just a week after that meeting, Grant received the lead role in Bringing Up Baby. A 1942 memo from Columbia Pictures noted that Grant consistently complied with the studio's after-hours event requirements, especially gatherings held for key financial partners. Even as his career reached its peak, Grant rarely declined an invitation, fully aware that Hollywood operated on connections just as much as it did on talent. Even when he had become a global superstar, his appearances at private events still drew the media's attention. Confidential magazine once reported that Grant was seen leaving the Biltmore Hotel at 2 a.m. with an unnamed European financier just days before he signed on for Hitchcock's To Catch a Thief. Stories like this fueled speculation about his private life, yet Grant never commented, never responded. He married 5 times, but none of the marriages truly brought him peace, partly because of the pressures of fame, and partly because he was constantly pulled into the image machine that Hollywood had built around him. Amid rumors and countless tabloid stories, Grant continued to choose silence. He understood that discretion was his shield in an environment where a single misstep could destroy both career and reputation. In a world that constantly scrutinizes and demands, the hardest thing isn't achieving fame, it's preserving one's identity and knowing when to stay silent to protect oneself. Troy Donahue, the handsome actor of the 1960s who paid a quiet price for his fame. With golden hair, a beach boy face straight out of California, and a clean-cut charm, Donahue quickly became one of Hollywood's ideal leading men. But once the cameras stopped rolling, his life was no longer his own. Donahue was frequently asked to appear at private gatherings for producers, directors, and film investors, places where actors were sometimes judged not by their performances, but by how well they fit and complied with the studio's expectations. At a 1958 party on Mulholland Drive, Donahue was invited into a private room where director Jack Warner and 2 major investors were present. A staff member recalled that when he walked out, Donahue looked extremely tense and exhausted, as if he had just gone through a difficult exchange. He wasn't asked to perform. He was simply summoned at the request of those who held decision-making power. Not long after a 7-year contract with Warner Brothers was signed, launching his celebrated career but also binding him to a tightly controlled system. From that moment on, every one of Donahue's public appearances came with unspoken expectations he was forced to accept. In a leaked journal entry, he wrote, "Every time I appeared on screen, I had to erase a part of my true self. After years of doing that, I could no longer tell what was me and what was the image they created." Fame lifted him to great heights, but it also took away his freedom and his right to live according to his own identity. In his final years, Donahue struggled with addiction and loneliness, the result of many long years worn down by professional pressure. He passed away quietly in 2001, leaving behind the image of a once radiant youth icon whose life also held many shadows. Fame can lift a person incredibly high, but sometimes the price is losing oneself. Hollywood may create stars, but each individual must fight to preserve their humanity within the whirlwind of the spotlight. Richard Chamberlain, the beloved television doctor admired by millions, yet a man who lived much of his life in the shadows of caution and pressure. When he took on the role of Dr. Kildare in NBC's hit 1961 series, he became the perfect symbol of American television, calm, exemplary, and radiant. But behind the lights, Chamberlain carried a constant anxiety, fearing that a single misunderstood private moment or a careless rumor could make everything collapse. According to a former assistant speaking with Hollywood insider Chamberlain, almost never left the studio with co-workers unless absolutely necessary. Most meetings were held at his apartment windows, shut curtains, drawn phone on silent. This wasn't aloofness. It was his way of protecting himself in an environment that constantly scrutinized him. Early in his career, he also faced pressure to attend after-hours gatherings in Beverly Hills, where young actors were judged not only on their performance, but also on their adaptability and willingness to cooperate with those who made the decisions on projects. There was a time when Chamberlain was asked to spend private time discussing a role with a television executive before the final approval was given. When a co-star offered to help him go public about it, Chamberlain sadly replied, "If I lose this role because of you, can you protect my entire life?" That one sentence clearly reflected the level of pressure he was under. For the decades that followed, Chamberlain maintained the image of a perfect gentleman, polite, discreet, and consistently aligned with every expectation Hollywood placed upon him. Only in the final years of his life, after stepping away from the spotlight, did he feel calm enough to speak about the loneliness and fear that had followed him for so many years. But by then, the life he had lived was almost nothing more than a carefully constructed shell, one designed to protect an industry that had shaped his every step from the very beginning. The stage lights may shine brightly, but behind them lie shadows that force people to sacrifice parts of their truth. Sometimes the most precious thing isn't fame, but the freedom to live as one's true self. If you feel these hidden truths are worth reflecting on, comment 1. If you're not entirely convinced, leave a 0 to share your perspective. Don't forget to like, share, and leave a sub to support our channel. Thank you for watching until the end. Your support is the motivation that keeps us bringing more compelling stories. See you in the next video.